What's the most fucked up thing you've ever did/saw? I saw my little brother getting hit by a car and flying a few meters through the air when he was only 6 years old. Fortunately he didn't even break a bone, but damn, I'll never forget this. The most fucked up thing I've seen was a guy who had just been in a motorcycle accident bleeding out on the side of the freeway. He was clenching onto the hand of the girl who was the driver of the car involved. She was crying hysterically. I saw his hand turn white in a matter of seconds. I remember it whenever I see someone on a bike. Fatal hit-and-run vehicle accident that happened in front of me. A car got struck by someone who ran a red light. The truck at fault basically slowed down a second and then drove away. I stopped to check on the people in the car. It was a couple of teens, the guy having substantial leg injuries and the girl was unconscious and losing a lot of blood. Like, her pants, seat, and floor carpet were becoming saturated with it. She basically stopped breathing and lost her pulse before the ambulance got there. The guy was crying and begging for me to help her, though there wasn't much I could do. Once she was loaded on the ambulance, the guy started pacing around, on his bad leg, and basically having a panic attack. The ambulance crew and some firefighters were mostly busy with the girl, so me and one other firefighter were trying to calm the guy down. He finally collapsed in pain and another ambulance arrived to get him taken care of. I remember getting in my car to drive home, turning the radio off, having a "what the fuck just happened?" moment, then driving home in silence while trying to process it. Didn't get much sleep that night, obviously. I later learned that they never got her pulse back. She was either 15 or 16 years old. Don't remember exactly. Found my grandpa with a self-inflicted shotgun blast to the head. Still alive, unconscious. I was less traumatized by that than my family's shock reactions. Edit, he died on the way to the hospital. He was also dying from skin cancer, bone cancer, and bladder cancer? I completely understand why he did it. I just wish assisted suicide was more readily available to make it less traumatic. Found a dead body on the sidewalk in front of my building on my third day living in NYC. When I told my supervisor about it at work, hoping to process it with someone, she just kind of brushed it off like "welcome to New York." I witnessed a bad car accident once. The car launched off of an overpass as I went under it. The car flipped several times. It was like something out of a movie. I was the first person on the scene. My wife called 911. It was not a pretty sight. The first thing I remember seeing was a severed arm beside the road. There wasn't much left of the person's body. Worked in a gas station in '80s, some guy came in after midnight and bought a cigarette lighter. He walked outside and went over to one of the gas pumps and pumped gas all over himself. Set himself on fire after that. After I tripped the emergency shutoff for the pumps, me and another customer ran outside. The customer tried to put the fire out on the guy with his jacket and I used a fire extinguisher on the other things that was on fire. Eventually we succeed, but the guy was seriously burned all over. This was the '80s, so most of his clothes was of synthetic fabric that had melted into his flesh. His face was kind of melted too. The ambulance came really quick and he was taken away. He didn't die, but I never saw him again. I talked to some cops a while later and they said that he was on probation and was protesting about his treatment and tried to commit suicide. I worked for a horse training ranch for a month when I was a kid. Me and the dude I worked with found a cow that had been dead for a while out in the field. It was bloated and gonna blow soon. We did not engage with the cow, we weren't prepared for a cleanup that day. When we came back prepared for cleaning the next day, it had ruptured and the smell was life-changing. It was spiritually bad. Since I was basically an unpaid intern, the paid guys told me to take a hike. 14-year-old me took a hike. I was a hard-working kid and they knew it, so let me off with that one. Saw a kid I knew get hit by a car, flip through the air, jump up and picked up one of his shoes and then collapse and got airlifted out. The rest of us were sitting on the corner eating hamburgers. Never saw him again. They said he was paralyzed. Edit, didn't expect this to get attention. I brought his banged up bike and glasses and shoes back to my house, but they never got picked up. My dad was on the volunteer fire department and managed the medevac landing and was first on scene because we only lived a few doors down. Watching a car traveling at about 130 miles per hour in my rearview mirror almost hit me, but instead hit the base of a bridge, the crunching sound and bodies flying everywhere, then total silence. The photo evidence for a child, baby, murder case that they showed in court when I worked for the Department of Human Services. The parents wanted to retain custody of their older son, which is why they were involved with CPS. I was 22. There were just countless pages we had to look at while the expert witnesses explained what we were seeing. The images are burned into my brain forever and I'll never forget his name as long as I live. That poor baby the two guys welded to a pole. The supply voltage to the overhead wires on the Melbourne, Australia, Metropolitan train system is 1500 VDC. God knows how many amps. A fuckton, anyway. DC current grabs and holds. They tried to steal the copper. They failed. The current has grabbed them and boiled them dry. All the visceral fluids were gone.